Bait? Like in which game? In this game? In Street Fighter V? There's multiple ways to do that. In Street Fighter V, really? Any game. Well, you have to, if you want to think about things like that, you have to think, okay, what is it that I do that makes the opponent want to press something? And it depends what level of player you're playing, you know. If you're playing some random scrubs, if they see you walking forward, their instinct will be to press a button, you know, to stop you from walking forward. If you play a higher level player, that might be more complicated than that, because they might be thinking, okay, what range is optimal for me? What range is optimal for him? You know, so if you're playing... If I play against Cammy, okay, this matchup right here, okay, to give you an idea. There's a certain range I can stand at where it doesn't matter what she presses, I always win. Wait, bad example right now, just a second. If I see her walking forward, I will be very tempted to press my stand medium kick, like that. Because I know that unless she gets to like around this range here, her buttons are not gonna reach me. So at a certain range, I will be very likely to press stand medium kick if she walks forward. So if she's like around here and she walks forward, it's very likely that I will press my stand medium kick. Now if you are the Cammy player and you know that the Birdie player thinks this way, you can instead do something like this. So check this out. Bam! See that? That's just an example, you know. See, I saw Cammy walking forward, but I get counter hit by her stand fierce because she knows that if she walks forward, she will bait me into pressing that button at that range. If you see what I mean. And that involves getting into your opponent's head and trying to understand how they think, you know. You see what I mean? So this is just one example. You can make millions of examples with millions of moves, but you just have to think, what is it that makes my opponent do something? And in this case, it's walking forward, for example. The typical example is when you have the opponent in the block string, but he blocks everything, so you start delaying stuff. Good to hear, Graziano. Yeah, exactly. Like delayed tech allows you to tech throws and block buttons. This is why you have to delay your attacks. But then obviously the whole thing turns around where if the opponent is using delayed buttons to try and frame trap you, you can press early buttons, and that means you will probably take control of the situation. But baiting is just, it's all about, there can be no bait if there's nothing to bait. And if you want to know whether there's something to bait, you have to understand how your opponent thinks. And in a 2 out of 3 tournament situation, that is very difficult. That takes a lot of skill. You have to quickly figure out how the opponent plays and put them in a sort of preordained category that you've made, you know? And that's how you play efficiently in tournament. You see a player, you see his habits, and you're like, okay, this is this kind of player, that one is that kind of player, I'm gonna do this and this, you know? If I see someone who presses mad buttons, I'll just try to whiff punish him. Or I'll know that that there's a lot that I can do about it. If I see someone who doesn't press buttons, I'm gonna take advantage and try to walk forward and try to take the space from him, because someone who is not committing to anything or not pushing any buttons is probably gonna be losing space. He's probably gonna be walking backwards. You can make a lot of like theory thinking and then apply it to tournaments, really. Yeah, that's what makes someone good at tournament play. It's being able to figure out their opponents fast, or having something that blows up their opponents quickly and efficiently. I mean, there's 2 ways to do it, really. Either you have something that's so good it doesn't matter who your opponent is, and you just try and blow them up really fast, or you adapt to your opponent. But adapting is so important, because that's how you become consistent at tournaments. If you can't adapt to your opponent fast enough, you have a higher likelihood of losing. That's just how it is, really. Now, there's so many other examples I can give, and it's not just baiting buttons, it's baiting jumps, baiting, let's say you're a fireball character, okay? Generally, the biggest reward someone can get on a fireball is to jump at the right time, to guess at the right time with a jump. And it doesn't matter what level of player you're playing against. It doesn't matter if you're playing Momochi or you're playing some random scrub. They all know that if they guess with the jump at the right time, they're gonna get a lot of damage, because they're gonna get a full jump and combo. The difference between the random scrub and Momochi is that Momochi's jumps are much harder to bait and much harder to predict. He's not necessarily gonna fall for some really basic shit, you know? He's not gonna fall for the Ryu pumping the fireball motion thing, you know? But random scrubs might.
Ryu, on the battle.
That's just you know how I explain it. That's a fireball example. There's examples with any kind of move. You can do it with any kind of move. Baiting is a huge part of the game. It's what makes the opponent think about his options and what risk is associated to it and what reward is associated to it, if it's worth taking that risk. And baiting can sometimes cause people to forget about the risk because they think they got a read on you, you know? Here's an example, and this is associated to what I call the ground and air dualism in Street Fighter. So this is something I often explain to my viewers. It's the fact that when you play Street Fighter, it's very difficult to play grounded footsies and to have a full focus on anti-airs at the same time. It's not easy. If you're playing the ground game, okay. If you're playing, if you're trying to whiff punish certain moves, or you're trying to you're trying to counter poke certain moves with punish. You're looking at the ground and you're looking for the opponent. The moment he jumps, you might not be ready for it because you were so focused on the ground that the moment he jumps, it kind of takes you out of your mind and you're like, whoa, what happened? But you can fake that. You can definitely fake that. So you could be Ryu right here, and you could be playing what I call fake footsies. And what I mean by fake footsies is that, for example, you walk back and forth, you're pressing buttons, but you're not really looking at the ground this whole time. You're pressing random buttons. You're trying to make the opponent think that you're playing the ground game, that you're playing the ground footsies, you know? You're just walking back and forth, pressing random buttons. But this whole time, your eyes are actually fixated in the air. And what that means is that the opponent thinks that you're not ready for anti-airs, but instead they're gonna jump and you're gonna be ready to anti-air them, you know? Because this whole time you're just looking at the air, you're just waiting for their jump. You know, you're like this, but you're not thinking about the ground, you know? That's just an example of baiting, you know? But that only works against people who know that. That only works against people who think about the game the same way, you know, who think about the ground and air dualism. If you play against random scrub 666 who will jump randomly and who will not be thinking about things like that, it's not a good idea. Against these people, you might as well just wait and wait for them to jump, because they're gonna do it. It's eventual, it's inevitable, it's gonna happen. So mind games and baiting that works at certain levels might not work at other levels. You have to, and that's why quickly assessing your opponent and putting them into various categories really helps. I'm trying to think of other examples, but I think I've made my point clear. Oh. Anyway, I just like to play. Yeah, you don't need many categories at first, but you know that there's so many types of players. Aggressive and passive is it's not just about playstyle, it's also about level. Like I just said, like, is he a high level player? Is he an average player? Is he a low level player? And by thinking about these things, you can quickly assess or you can quickly imagine how much does this guy know about the game, or how much does this guy play by convention. And then, this is not to say all high-level players play by convention. This is not to say all high-level players play logically. No, they don't. Look at Marn. He got 4th at NCR by being crazy, by doing crazy shit. Because he knows that at high level, crazy shit can work too. Why? Because at high level, most people play very logically. They play with, like, they play very logically. So sometimes the illogical stuff just goes through, you know? How do you beat someone who doesn't think? I might be, actually. I checked the tickets, the flight tickets, and it's actually very doable for me. But I'll have to see. It depends on my plans for other things like studies, etc.
I'll eat something after this.
I mean, categories. I mean, there's so many categories. It's not just level, it's not just playstyle. It's also, do they press many buttons on defense, or are they more conservative? What kind of defensive options do they go for? What kind of offensive options do they go for? And then... and sometimes if it's a tournament, you can even put them in categories of how nervous does the player actually get? Is this a guy who is likely to get nervous? Is this a guy who's likely to get angry or frustrated by something that might happen in the game? And that's where you might start going for options that affect them. You know, if you're playing against an angry player, you might try and go for things that make them angry. Because in the history of fighting games, it's almost never been the case that someone who gets angry plays better. That's almost never happened. I mean, people often cite Ricky Ortiz as being an example of someone who plays better angry, but come on, everyone knows that's bullshit. Say aggressive if the GP jump or backdash and defensive. He's not necessarily this defensive if he stands there blocking, it just means he's patient. If you play against, let's say you're the guy on the defense, you're playing against someone who is trying to frame trap the shit out of you, who's just pressing buttons, like it's like low strong, like imagine you're playing some Cammy and it's like, she's like low strong, stand fierce, low strong, blah. Just block. Doesn't mean you're being defensive, it just means you're being smart. That guy is not throwing you. A lot of people have this problem in Street Fighter. For some reason, they don't throw a lot. They just stand there. I mean, they just press 1 million buttons and don't throw. You see it. You even see it at high level. Like, blocking is really good in this game. Yeah, exactly. They're like... I mean, some people go ham with frame traps. That's all they do. And then you just block and nothing happens, you know? Well, you mean throws? Throws are fucking good in this game. They do fucking 200 stun. Throws are ridiculous in this game. You should throw. Throws is what completes the offensive equation in this game. If you don't throw, you're not mixing up.